Welcome to the 9 Points of Saddlefit series. In this series, I'm going to take you through the steps to check the fit of your own saddle so you can be a more proactive and knowledgeable horse owner, or you can check the fit of your saddle for your clients' horses. In today's video, we're going to check the tree width and tree angle of your saddle. The best thing about what I'm going to share with you today is the fact that you can apply it to any saddle regardless of your saddle brand or the discipline that you ride. And that's because saddle fit starts with the horse first, and it starts with equine anatomy and biomechanics. And at the end of the day, the horse doesn't care what type of saddle you throw on their back, as long as it fits their anatomical requirements and doesn't hurt. My name is Julia Ellebrand. I'm a certified saddle ergonomist at Saddlefit for Life. If you're not familiar with Saddlefit for Life, we've been offering evidence-based saddle fit education for over 35 years. We work with horse owners, riders, equine professionals, and veterinarians to help them better understand their horse's anatomy and biomechanics in the context of saddle fit, to allow them to offer more proactive care to their horses or to their clients' horses. Before you can check the fit of your own saddle at home, you first need to develop an understanding of where on your horse's body the saddle can and cannot sit. In order to do this, a prerequisite for this series is mapping your horse. I will take you through step by step how to identify the anatomical landmarks on your own horse's body so you can start to check the fit of your own saddle on a regular basis. All you need in order to map your own horse is a couple of pieces of sidewalk chalk and a tape measure and your horse on level ground in a well-lit location. Let's get started. All right, now we can get started with mapping your horse. The first line I'm going to draw is the widest part of my horse's shoulder. Most of us can probably agree that we don't want a saddle to sit on the shoulder. So the furthest forward the saddle can sit is directly behind the shoulder blade here. But when he moves, the shoulder blade is going to rotate upward and backward. And the shoulder blade has a cap of cartilage around it that we have to protect. Cartilage, like the cartilage in your nose or your ears, once damaged, does not regrow. So it's very important that you're very protective over that cartilage. We don't want our saddle to sit on top of the shoulder, and we don't want our saddle to damage the cartilage. So in order to be protective over that cartilage, the angle of your saddle tree needs to match the angle of your shoulder blade. So when that shoulder rotates upward and backward, it can slide under the saddle in a swift motion. Next, I'm going to make myself some reference points. We'll get back to those in a moment. So just make 2 4-inch marks. The width of my hand is 4 inches. Otherwise, you can also use a tape measure. You want to do a 4-inch mark from the side of the wither and another 4-inch mark from that mark you just made. So 4 inches and 8 inches here. Next, I'm going to look for his sternum. His sternum is the highest point before the ribs split off. Usually it lines up pretty well with the base of the withers. The horse's sternum, like our sternum, is the balance point. That's their center of gravity, and that's the quietest place for you to sit. If you think about riding bareback, you want to usually sit quite close to the base of the wither because it's the quietest place for you to be. So if we can align your sternum with your horse's, you're always going to be with the motion. If you're sitting back here on the weaker part of your horse's back, you're always going to be leaning forward, subconsciously trying to align yourself with that sternum. So again, trying to find the highest point before the ribs split off and following that all the way up until approximately the base of the wither and make a dotted line there. Next, we're going to go to the back of the horse. And you can actually see it quite well from where I'm standing. I don't know if you can see it from where you are, but we have the ring of flights back here. The ring of flights is a great way to find your horse's last thoracic rib. Another way to find it is to palpate. So you want to put your hand on the point of your horse's hip, gently palpate forward until you feel the edge of the last rib, and then follow that rib all the way up until the spine. And that's where your horse's last rib is located. This is also where the 2 hair directions meet. So we also call this the rein line. If your horse gets wet in the rain, that's where the rein is going to run down their body. So make yourself another mark back here. Beyond this last rib are his transverse processes of the lumbar spine. That is a non-weight bearing area. That is a big red zone. So I'm going to put a big red X back here. We also call this the bucking reflex point. We can't have a saddle extend beyond this point. Saddles that are longer than your horse's last thoracic rib and go into that lumbar area, they may cause your horses to buck. Horses will have difficulty tracking up, difficulty picking up the canter. They might counter canter, switch leads behind. So a very important zone for your horse, in order for your horse to move in a sound way and to be able to move over their back, they have to be able to engage their hind end. So very important that we identify the last thoracic rib. Next, I'm going to use my fingertips to palpate his longissimus muscle. You can see it's nice and jiggly up here. The longissimus muscle is the longest back muscle. I'm going to follow that muscle all the way up until I feel a medium to hard edge. That is the edge of the supraspinous ligament. So we know we want to stay off of the spine itself. We have spinal nerves that emerge along the spine, but we also need some extra room on both sides. You can see that's quite wide. So you can see how easily I can move this big horse around just by applying light pressure to the side of that supraspinous ligament. So we can also see when I place pressure along here, that he dips away from that pressure. That's a parasympathetic reaction. So it's a nerve reaction because I'm hitting his reflex point. This becomes your gullet channel. So you have to make sure that your gullet channel is wide enough to stay off of the spine itself, but also wide enough to bypass the supraspinous ligament, because we want our horses to be able to engage the core and lift the back, but they won't be able to do that if you have a gullet channel that constantly tells them to arch their back. Okay? So again, palpate the longissimus muscle, follow it up until you feel that medium to hard edge, and then you can just make yourself a couple of dotted lines along the way. Next, I'm going to follow the longissimus muscle down until I feel the top of his rib head. This is where the muscle starts to thin off, and I want to stay up on the thick part of the muscle where the horse can tolerate the most weight. So I'm just going to make myself a couple more notches here. Now it's time, almost time to connect the dots. So we can connect the bottom line here, connecting to our 8-inch mark that we made on our second line. And we can also connect the dots up here along the edge of that supraspinous ligament. Finally, what we're left with is the wither clearance. So most people know that we need clearance on top of the wither, but it's also very important that you have clearance on both sides. The thoracic trapezius runs in this area, and it's a non-weight-bearing muscle. We also call this area nature's handbrake. If you have ever seen a stallion go to breed a mare in the wild or live cover, he's going to bite her in this vicinity, which is going to send a nerve reaction to the forehand to stop what you're doing, hollow the back, open the pelvis, and prepare for breeding. So again, the polar opposite of how we want our horses to go around the ring. So it's really important that we have clearance on top of the withers, but we also have clearance on either side of the wither. So that's why we made our 4-inch mark on the side of the wither, if you remember from the beginning. So now I can connect from our last thoracic rib line along the supraspinous ligament all the way to our 4-inch mark here. And what we're left with is this box here for real estate for Saddlefit. This is called our saddle support area. The saddle support area is the area on your horse's back where they can safely bear a weight. And the Saddlefit for Life philosophy, when it comes to the saddle support area, is quite simple. Stay off of scapular cartilage, stay off of nerve endings, stay off of reflex points, ligaments, all of those things that are going to make our horses hollow away and prevent them from moving in a sound manner. We want the saddle to be supported on muscle instead. I've shaded in the saddle support area for you in green for you to better see where it is located on this particular horse. But again, we want to stay off of the shoulder. We want to stay off of the side of the thoracic trapezius, off of the spine and off of the supraspinous ligament. We want to stay ahead of the lumbar spine. So we need our saddle support area to end ahead of the last thoracic rib. And ideally, we want to be able to align our center of gravity with our horses. Now you can go ahead and you can identify those anatomical landmarks on your own horse. And then you can move on to the next step, which will be checking the fit of your own saddle. All right, now we can get into checking the fit of your saddle. I've placed my saddle on his back. Very important when you get started is to make sure that your saddle is in the right position. So you want to make sure that your saddle tree is on that second line that you drew directly behind your horse's shoulder blade. So a good way to know, especially on a jumping saddle that has a bit of a more forward flap, is to use the D-ring as an indicator as to where your gullet plate or your tree is. So I make sure that my tree point, so my D-ring, is behind his shoulder blade, and that anything that goes ahead of that second line that I drew is just material that is non-structural. Now we're going to check the tree width and tree angle. This is a difficult concept to really wrap your head around because it's important to understand that tree width and angle are connected in a way, but they have to be adjustable independently from each other. Meaning, you might have a horse that is wide in their width and requires a steep angle. Or you might have a horse that is wide in their width and requires a flatter angle. Or vice versa, you might have a narrow horse that requires a steep angle or a flatter angle. So it's important that we're able to change the gullet plate and the tree of your saddle in both width and angle, okay? One of the downsides of interchangeable gullet plate systems is that lack of adjustability in the width, because they're always just changing this way. The width always remains the same. So we're just changing the angle. But again, we need to be able to do both because the horse needs to be accommodated this way and this way, okay? So when we're talking about width, what we're looking for is we're looking for that side wither clearance that we talked about earlier in a previous video. So if your saddle has good clearance on top and it has good clearance on the side, up to 4 inches down from the side of your horse's withers, the width looks good. That's great. If your saddle is already making contact with your horse's wither and you don't have any clearance on the sides, your width is too wide. If your saddle is sitting up really high in the pommel and you're making contact up in that 4-inch triangle that we don't want any pressure, then your width is too narrow, okay? So what we're looking for, again, is that wither clearance, 2 to 3 fingers on top, 2 to 3 fingers on the side. If that is given, your width is good. Now we have to check our tree angle. Once we've verified that the width is okay, we have to confirm that the angle of our tree is also okay. Just as a reminder, the angle of your horse's shoulder blade has to match the angle of your saddle tree. So when your horse moves, the shoulder blade can rotate upward and backward, and it's not going to get interrupted by your gullet plate, by your saddle tree. If you think about sliding barn doors, if they're in good alignment, they slide really well. But if they're off just by a little bit, every time you try to close that door, it's going to hit and it's not going to close properly. So it's really important that we're matching the angle of the shoulder blade. So in order to do that, we made ourselves a nice mark on the widest part of our horse's shoulder. And I'm going to use 2 pens to find out if my angle is correct. So I'm going to line up the first pen with that line that I drew over the widest part of his shoulder. And I'm going to flip the pen 1 time. With one hand, I'm going to hold this pen in place. That gives me the shoulder angle. With the other pen, I'm going to insert it on the side of my panels here. And I'm going to stand kind of in front of my horse and double check if those angles match. Let's have a look. So once you've confirmed that on both sides, it's very important to do that on both sides, you know whether or not your tree angle is correct for your horse. What's important to remember is that horses don't have a collarbone. So their forelimbs and the thoracic sling is held on by muscle alone. So as your horse builds pectoral muscles, this area in front of their chest, the chest is going to become wider, and that space that you need in your tree width may change over time. The angle of your horse's shoulder blade might change as well because the position of the shoulder blade could change over time too. So if you're moving through the levels, if your horse is advancing in their training and you're doing more advanced movements, for instance, or jumping higher fences, then your horse is going to develop more muscle and the width and angle requirements might change. And on the contrary, if your horse spends some time in the pasture or gets some time off due to an unfortunate injury, that tree width and tree angle requirement is going to change again. So it's really important to remember that if you're investing in a new saddle, look for a saddle that is adjustable in width and in angle to allow that saddle to change as your horse changes over time, saving you from investing in saddles over and over again. Thank you very much for tuning into our 9 Points of Saddlefit series. For more free educational content, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok, or if you're interested in furthering your education beyond free content, we'd love to chat with you. You can book a call with one of our instructors to learn more about our courses. We offer evidence-based saddle fit education that is online and self-paced, so you can fit it to your own schedule. And we have different courses both for horse owners and riders, as well as for equine professionals, and continuing professional development credit for veterinarians as well. I can't wait to see you in the next video, or maybe even welcome you to the Saddle Fit for Life Academy permanently.